I thought it was going to be a constant fight every day, on edge every single day, and having contact with the enemy every single day. The sights, smells, the feelings, the ambiance of war was there. It just wasn't there in the concentration that I thought it was going to be.
Am I gonna get blown up? Is my friend gonna get blown up? How is it gonna happen? What am I gonna do if that happens? What happens is that you experience that mostly in the beginning, and then it's amazing how your mind works, because you kind of develop a rhythm, and it becomes part of your everyday, where you do it without even knowing, So it is frustrating, but I could say mostly in the beginning, and then you kind of you fall into the groove.
It was an atypical day in Iraq. A sandstorm had just come through that morning. The mission got delayed a little bit. It was more humid. It was just disgusting weather. Your typical muggy New England day, but add tens of thousands of tons of sand in the mix.
The insurgents were lobbing mortars and rockets into our compound. They've soon realized that we would return pretty accurate fire on the locations from where they were firing their mortars. So what they would do is they'd put mortars on the back of pickup trucks and stuff. They'd fire, mortars and rockets, and then they'd drive away. After we would fire, we'd send a QRF, quick reactionary force, to the location of where those mortars were fired. So they knew that we were doing this. So they planned basically the perfect ambush, and that was what I saw. What I saw was them being ambushed.
It was one of those nights in Iraq where it was pitch black. You could barely see your face in front of your hand unless there was some sort of ambient light from, a vehicle, a fire, or if you had your night vision on. It was just so black.
We were together at the top of a hill, I remember, and we were actually bedded down for the night with our trucks.
We're going from eating MREs to the entire 3 o'clock position lighting up, looking exactly like the 4th of July. You can see trace surrounds, and then just as we began to see trace surrounds, we started hearing over the radio the cries for help.
And I remember seeing like this, smoke and fire and mushroom type cloud.
We got the clearance from command to leave our OP, which is the overwatch position, and began our descent onto the ambush zone on Smuggler's Road.
The 12 of us made our way down.
The screams that were coming over the radio were right on par with, what my expectations of war were going to be. You could hear it over the gunfire. You could hear it over the rounds that were in the vehicles, what they call cooking off. They were exploding. You could hear it over the fire crackling.
When we got down there, you saw like sporadic, just like fire. It was really dark at night. There's no lighting there. And the way it looked was there's this road, approximately a car length and a half, maybe wide, asphalt, and then basically like a cement wall on the left-hand side as you're looking down the road. And then on the right-hand side was a field and then a river. And, right away we pulled up, and you could just, anybody that's trained for 2 seconds can tell, like, this is perfect place to get hit.
A couple hundred meters into that, we came across the first vehicle, which had a couple guys in it. And we asked them, exactly what was going on real quick. And a few of them had burns about the face. Some of them had shrapnel wounds.
Initially smelled like the diesel burning. It's like some of the powder, I guess, from like the concrete and stuff still in the air. And like a smell that I really didn't know up until that point, which I later found out. It's like burning flesh. And it was from the soldiers, our soldiers that were there.
And then we began to go down to the next vehicle, which was right next to a Humvee that was completely upside down on its roof, engulfed in flames, next to about a 8-10 foot wall.
We get through, and it's pretty horrible. You see like Humvees on, some of them were still in, somewhat on fire, and you see just like holes everywhere, parts of Humvees, and it's pretty tough when we started getting into the actual, what we call a kill zone, the actual point where they would initiated the improvised explosive devices.
The rounds were cooking off in the Humvee, so we couldn't figure out how to go around it. And it was almost like a higher power was involved. There was something burning in a tree right above the wall that I had talked about. And Santos had said, we should get on the other side of that wall and make it around this, because otherwise we're going to get killed.
As we're going through, we see the wall, and Sean and I get on the opposite side of the wall because we couldn't see back there. And when we're back there, you see, it's horrible. It's actually human body parts in the trees. And you feel drips on you, and you go look, and it's red, so and at that point you kind of just, for me, you didn't just stand there and kind of think about it. You just, oh man, that's messed up, and then you don't really process it at that point, and so all this is, all this that you're seeing and that you're smelling, it's just, it's amazing how it didn't stop us. We were able to continue and to do what we had to do. We continued to clear it.
We ran over to the wall, began to scale it, and we thought it was a tire that had got blown into the tree and was burning, because if you've ever heard, rubber burn and drip, it makes that fizzle, it was just dripping down. It burnt our hands a little bit, got in the back of our necks, down our shirt, but then we were able to get over the wall. And then when we got on the other side of the wall, we had seen exactly what had happened inside that Humvee, because the men that were in that Humvee were in pieces. On the other side, and there was people trying to care for them, but at that time they were long expired.
We actually came on this portion of the wall where I looked. I don't remember if it was Sean or I don't remember who looked at it, but we both saw this drawing. It almost looked like chalk on the opposite side of the wall, and it showed Humvees, and it was actually what we in military terms call a sand table. It's basically just drawings of how the operation would go, and it was Humvees, and it showed trees they tied improvised explosive devices to the tops of trees, so that even the soldiers that were in the guns on the turrets, they would be they wouldn't be protected from an explosion from the top. So they went to the point of thinking that far into it. And we pushed on past that, and I remember just going up and down rocks and in trees and stuff. I remember one vivid memory that I have is, you see this soldier. He was unconscious. I'm not sure if he ended up, but he was being pulled by another soldier, and his leg was was exposed basically, and he just keep going.
Made it past where that kill zone was, because we could still see that ball of flames from the Humvee. We jumped back over the wall, and when we got on the other side of that wall, that's where there was just screaming men, bodies and pieces of bodies absolutely everywhere, and began to assist where possible.
They buried anti-tank mines, which are, you know, they are built to destroy tanks. Well, Humvees aren't tanks, and I think there was probably like two of them, two different positions, and two anti-tank mines stacked in each one. So if one of them could destroy a tank, imagine what two of them could do to a Humvee.
There was several guys on the ground that were still unconscious. There was guys that were bleeding. There were guys that were having makeshift tourniquets put in place. And then just people that had no idea what was going on because, you know, they were concussed and still confused.
And then Sean and I came up to a Humvee that the driver was still pinned in there. There was actually a portion of a tree that came through the windshield and pinned him down, but he was still you know, alert, conscious. He just said that, you know, he had some I don't know if he said he couldn't move his legs or something like that, but he was still conscious. We got him out of the truck, and I remember like Sean just, you know, being the man on the scene, you know, just taking control, and he had experience with being a paramedic. And at that point, there was a lot more soldiers that have arrived, and, you know, we got him out, and Sean did a great job of doing what he could to take care of him. Called in Blackhawks to come and medevac him out.
It was at that point the captain from that unit and the patrol leader had come up to me with their medic that was already there and overwhelmed, and began to ask if we could assist in collecting the bodies, the pieces, and if we had any more body bags, and if we could find out if we were cleared to transport the dead back.
I remember, you know, some of the guys had to pull some of the, you know, the soldiers out of the trees and put them into, we had to put them into body bags. And then my Humvee, actually, we put them all, we put the soldiers' remains into my truck, and we had to drive back to the FOB, which is a forward operating base, which is basically like, you know, our camp, our compound.
We later found out when we were packaging the dead for transport that that tire that we thought was in the tree wasn't a tire. It was one of the soldiers from the Humvee that had upended.
We left there, we go up, and we go up to the FOB, and we pull like the body bags out of the back of my truck, take them to the coolers, and you know, they did whatever they needed to do, that unit. And I don't remember what we did after that, honestly. I think we just called it a night. I don't know.
It wasn't until about an hour and a half, 2 hours later, when we actually got back to our command post, that we had a lit building to walk into, and I saw just how, you know, bloody I was, and the pieces of that moment that were still left with me on my gear, on my clothes, burned into my skin. The scent that's stuck in my nose, the taste that's in my mouth. I just walked over to where the shower was that we had and just jumped in fully clothed and just began to peel back the layers. And went back to the hooch to try to get some sleep.